Good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. Once again, my name is Cuts by Dre, New Styles Mobile Barber, and I'm back in the shop again for another tutorial episode. Today we're going to be going over a high ball fade for my Barbering 101 series. I like to focus on speed, so my videos are in real time. So, this is basically going to be a high ball fade. I do my cuts in real time so that you can get a feel on how long it should take to get your haircuts out, because the faster you cut, the more money you're gonna make. So that's what I'm all about. I'm all about getting your speed up if you're checking out my channel. So hey, let's get right into this cut, all right? All right, today we doing a high ball fade, Barber School 101. I like to start my fades low, even if it's a high fade. I always like to start them low, starting at the eyebrow, going around towards the back of the head, symmetrical, going below the occipital bone in the back. I like to do that because I think when you start your fades off low, you still get a more gradual faded look, even if it's a high fade. And also, you can never bring your fade back down, but you can always bring it up higher and higher. So that's one thing I like to do in all my cuts. You'll see me starting out with the fade low, whether it's a high fade, whether it's a temple fade, whether it's a low fade. So I'm using my Boost FXs to clean it up with the no guard clipper all the way closed. I never start my ball fades with the ball edger. I always do my balding last. That way it's less of a line to take out. It's a lot easier to take out that ball line if you don't put a deep ball line in at the beginning of the cuts. This is the technique that I've came up with that allows me to cut much faster. Now my videos aren't sped up. I like to do my videos in real time so you can see about how much time that it would take to cut, a basic ball fade, a basic fade, just to get your speed up. As you can see, I'm not going super fast. I'm going around the client's head, in a pretty good motion. I like to go from one side to the other instead of, just cutting one side and going back and cutting the other. Once I put that first line going around, I like to start what I call as a pre-shape up. And the reason why I do pre-shape ups is so that I can see the darkness of the hairline in the beginning of the cut. That allows me not to take the hairline back. It allows me to give them a more natural hairline and allows me to keep that area dark while I'm fading the hair because I can see where the hairline is supposed to be. I won't fade that area out and lighten it up as much, thus keeping that front area where you got the that 90-degree or kind of like 45-degree angle there. I like to keep that dark, thus you don't have to use as much highlights or any highlights, if any. So I like to do this pre-shape up, just very light, not a deep shape up, just a light pre-shape up, getting the cut started. This way it also allows you to cut a little bit faster because lining up the person in the beginning will allow you to, to do your shape up a little bit quicker towards the end. All right, so once I get that pre-shape up in, definitely comb your client's hair out. Make sure you get it all even. Make sure you consult with them, see what length they want to take it down. This particular client, he wants the top taken down about wave length. So, I'll use my Boost FX with a half guard, and I'll leave that lever all the way open, and I'll bring the hair down to about a wavelength all over. Some clients I go against the grain and then come back with the grain. This particular client, I normally don't go against the grain with his. Sometimes older clients, I refrain from going against the grain. Not to call my client old, but I refrain to go against the grain on older clients because the hair might not be as thick, might be thinning a little bit. And when you go against the grain, it does cut off more hair. So right now you can see as I take off his hair, I'm just going around his head. No particular pattern, just going around, just getting it down to the level that I want to start my fade. Now, As you can see here, level all the way open. I'm going around putting that next line in, and that line there is about a half an inch all the way around. I'll do one side first and I'll flip it all the way around, go all the way around to the other side, and we're talking about maybe about a half inch in, no guard, lever all the way open. And that's going to, as you can see, put another line in his hair. But this definitely is the fastest way, to complete, a ball fade or any type of fade. Now, I'll come back with my half guard or my number one guard. Right now, I have on the half guard, and I'm proceeding to take the line out that I just put in. A lot of flicking out, when you're doing your fades, you got to give that flick motion. You got to flick out with your wrist as you go up higher. You might can't tell, as easy with my videos because I like to do my videos in real time, and I'm using a chest cam. It might be a little bit difficult to see, exactly what I'm doing. But if you follow with me, you can get an idea of the time that it's taking you to cut the hair and how you should go about it. Now I'm attacking that bottom line. I'm taking my guard off. This is clipper open. And as you can see, I'm pretty much hitting the areas to take that line out, doing some detail work. Cutting hair involves a lot of detail work. What makes a good haircut versus a great haircut is detail work. You got to constantly do detail work. And detail work involves hitting different light spots and dark spots, trying to blend them to make a smooth, even, what I call a waterfall fade, a waterfall blend where you cannot see any type of indentation, just a smooth blend from top to bottom. And this involves a lot of detail work. So as you see here, I'm continually to work on this side, going up against the grain. And if you notice, I'm always cutting against the grain, against the flow in which the hair is growing as I go around the client's head. And I like to let your young barbers know, barbers are just getting in the game. Get you a good pair of clippers that you like to work with and stick with them. Don't change up the clippers a whole lot in the beginning until you learn how those clippers cut. Different clippers cut hair differently, different textures of hair cut differently. So you want to learn your clipper. You want to know how much hair it's going to take off when I got my lever closed, when I got it all the way open, when I got it halfway in between, when I hit it just a little bit. It's very important to learn how much hair your clipper takes off based on the type of textures that you're cutting. And that's what I'm going to show you in my videos. We're going to go through different textures of hair. And it's not something that you can just watch. You really got to practice this, and you really got to learn. You really got to know what your clipper does. As you can see here, the higher I go up in the haircut, I throw on my half guard, and I try to work out any of those imperfections. The lower I cut, the lower I am in the haircut, I'll take off the guard, and I'll just use the clipper with either the lever all the way open, all the way closed, depending on how much darkness I think needs to be taken out. Right now I got on my guard. I'm going around the haircut, around the crown area with the guard on, clipper closed in some instances and open depending on where I am in the haircut. Even going down, as you can see right here, that allows you to smoothen out certain parts, get the hair even in certain areas as well. You got to be very careful, though, when you do this technique. You got to know your clipper. You got to know that I'm going to be able to go down and not gash or take out a chunk of hair. And that only comes from experience. That only comes from putting in time, learning your particular clipper. Here, I got the guard off, and I'm just going up, taking out any imperfections, trying to get that fade as smooth as possible. Like I said earlier, I like to do my cuts in real time so you can see how much time it should take to do a proper, nice, smooth blend. We're about 10 minutes into this fade right now, and It's a lot of detail work, a lot of going over the same areas over and over again to try to get that fade as smooth as possible. I like to keep the areas in the front of my fade dark towards the temple area. I like to keep that dark so that I can have a more natural dark hairline without using, a lot of enhancements. So as you can see here, I'm still working on that fade, flicking the wrist out. Got my guard back on right now. Normally when you got a haircut this low, if the top is this low and they want a ball fade, all you really need is a half guard, a one guard maybe, and that's about it. You can actually get away with just using a half guard because depending on how you hold your clipper, you'll take off more hair if you have the clipper flat against the head versus if you tilt it out and you're almost kind of like raking the hair. As you can see how I'm going around his head, sometimes I'll cut with the clipper flat on his head, kind of laid down on his head. Then other times you'll see me raise it up and almost look like I'm raking the hair. I'm not, the clipper isn't flat. It's kind of like on, I guess, a 45-degree angle. Now I'm beginning to bald my client. I like to do the balding last. I switched up my clippers. I went to my gold FXs because I got them adjusted to cut a lot closer. And this is what I mean by knowing your clipper, knowing how much your clipper cuts, and using particular clippers to do particular parts of the haircut. This particular part right here is where I bald my clippers. I don't use shavers on my clients because I've been in this game for 30 years and I've seen a lot of clients break out behind using shavers. So I'll get the closest cut, the closest clipper that I can. You see a couple of imperfections on the back of his neck right there. That comes from cutting the hair real close in the back. If I was to put a shaver on this guy's head, he'd probably break out a lot worse than he is now, and it just wouldn't look good. Some of those bumps are permanent. So I disencourage y'all from using those shavers, especially on African American hairs. On straighter hair, you can get away with it because the hair doesn't curl up as much when it's growing back. But African American hair, the hair tends to curl up and grow inside the skin, thus causing the head to bump up, and you could cause permanent scar damage on the back of the head. Back to this particular client, I'm cleaning them up around the bottom using my gold FXs now. The same clipper that I put that line in, as you can see, I'm flicking out with the wrist right on top of that line to take that line out. Same clipper I put it in with, it's the same clipper I'm using to take it out. Now, as you see, as I go around taking that line out, the fade isn't smooth. So you got to come back with your faders, with my boost, and you got to work on all those imperfections. You got to hit it in spots. You got to see where you need to lighten up some spots. You got to see where you might need to leave some spots darker. But this is where practice comes in. This is where repeating something over and over again, practice. That's what they say, practice makes perfect. You're not going to get this overnight, but as you can see, as I repeatedly hit these same areas over and over again, the fade gradually starts to come into play. You can kind of see that fade starting to work its way in there, getting a lot smoother. A lot of the detail work is actually starting to pay off now. Still see some imperfections in there. You still see some lines in there that I'm going to have to get out before this fade can be classified as a smooth, tight, high ball fade. And some people might say, well, that don't look like a high fade. That's what I call a high fade. All my fades I like to be gradual. I think fades are exactly what they're called, a fade. A fade should be faded down from top to bottom as smooth as possible. So this right here is what I call a high ball fade because I'm fading up higher around the crown area. The bottom is going to be completely bald, but as you go up higher, you're going to see some hair that's going to get darker and darker till you get to the top, the desired length that he wants to wear the top. So as you can see, I'm still doing detail work, constantly hitting spots, Constantly hitting that lever on my clipper, pushing it in, pushing it out, knowing how much hair I'm gonna cut off when the lever is all the way out versus when the lever is all the way in. Tilting my clipper up sometime, and sometimes laying it flat against the head will take off more and less hair depending on what you're doing. So as you can see, I'm still working on it, taking out those imperfections. Not going too fast, moderately. We're about 15 minutes into this cut. And as you can see, it's starting to come through. You can actually start to see this blend come into fruition. As I cut towards the top, I always throw my guard back on because I don't want to make any unnecessary light spots at the top where I have to work on and get those out. Because while you're cutting hair, you can actually cause yourself more work than you would normally have to if you don't, learn your clipper, if you don't learn how much a particular clipper is going to cut off. And know a client's head as well. The more you cut a client's hair, the more you'll learn the client and the more you'll know, okay, how his hair is going to react when I do this versus when I do that. So as you can see here, I'm still cleaning them up, still trying to get this cut as clean and as perfect as you possibly can. I can still see some imperfections, so I'm still hitting it. Opening the clipper, closing the clipper, coming down with the clipper, as you can see, going up with the clipper. All in the same motion, all with no guard. Once you learn your clipper, you'll be able to go through a cut, at this particular speed or even faster. Methodically going around my client's hair. I like to work both sides of my client. I don't like to do one side at a time because I think when you do one side of the client's hair and then go and do the other side next, you don't give your eyes a rest. Plus, you gotta match one side to the other. If one side is completed already and you flip your client around to do the other side, then you gotta try to match the two. But if you spin your client around and work on his entire head at the same time, you're going to get a more uniform cut. It's going to look the same pretty much on both sides without you having to, do a lot of unnecessary guesswork because I've already finished one side. Now I'm working on the shape up. This is the final shape up. I did that pre-shape up in the beginning. Now I'm just pretty much going back over the pre-shape up with these clippers here, just making that shape up a little bit sharper, getting out some of these imperfections that you see, towards the bottom, still fading them up, knowing how much this particular clipper cuts off, knowing how high I can go up without causing any other lines. As you can see, some faint lines are in there. So this particular right here, I know that this clipper will take it out, but you still got to use that wrist motion. You still got to flick out with your wrist when you hit certain spots, preventing from adding even more lines. And you got to make sure you don't go up too high. As you can see, I'm starting to finish this guy up, putting the finishing touches on his hairline, making this cut nice and sharp. I don't like to use highlights on a lot of my customers because, those highlights don't last long. And if you use this style with the pre-shape up and then the shape up at the end, you don't really have to use a lot of highlights. Here I'm using the shaver to clean my customer's face up. As I was telling you earlier in the cut, I don't use shavers on the back of their neck so not to cause any type of breaking out. Make sure you consult your clients even before you put a shaver on the front of their face. Make sure that you consult them so they'll let you know, if their skin is too sensitive for these shape ups. I deleted the beard part of this cut. I didn't want to go through the beard part, so you can, this is pretty much a cut about the fade. So I edited out the actual beard part because really I just cut it off the side of his face, as you can see. Now I'm doing what I call is my powder line. This is similar to what you see a lot of barbers when they use the chalk line. This is the same kind of technique, except it's a lot faster. I'm using talc powder I'm putting it in my hand, and then I'm dipping my clipper right there in the talc powder. I don't. Sorry, I'm not letting you see that, but I'm actually dipping my clipper in the powder right on my hand, and I'm following that same hairline that I put in. This allows me to see the hairline better. It makes those hairs stand up on his forehead so that I can see them a lot better, so that I can cut those hairs off that you couldn't normally see, because once that powder hits them, it kind of highlights them. Then I'll dust it off, and I'll come back and I'll clean it up. Sort of just like you see a lot of barbers doing with the pencil, but this technique right here is a lot faster, gives you the same technique. It allows you to be able to give a cosmetic look almost without having to spray the customer with any of those, dyes or any of those products that blacken the hair. It's going to come off real short. Some customers like the powder, some customers don't, but it allows you to see the hairline a lot sharper. If they don't like it, you can just wipe that right off when you clean them up with your sea breeze towards the end of the cut. And some customers like to leave that little bit of powder on because it does give you a kind of detailed look. So as you can see, I'm finishing this client up, man. I got that fade pretty smooth there. I'm still hitting some imperfections. If you like what you see, definitely subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button. Let somebody know I'm new to YouTube. Trying to give y'all some information on how to cut a little bit faster. Cuts by Dre, New Styles Mobile Barber. As you can see, I'm still hitting this cut for imperfections, man. Even though I done shaped them up, I done powdered them up, I'm still going over hitting this cut for imperfections, because what makes a great cut, not just a good cut, but a great cut, you gotta make sure you keep going over those imperfections and get that cut as smooth as possible. And always finish off with those shears. That shear work is gonna get those loose hairs off the top. Spray him up, get him looking nice and good, smelling good. And if he's loving it, that's the finished product right there. That's Cuts by Dre, New Styles Mobile Barber. Check me out in my next video.